Bills fans have been living through one of the strangest seasons in recent memory, and every conversation about this team seems to swing from optimism to frustration in a matter of seconds. When you look at Buffalo sitting with 7 wins and 4 losses, it is not a terrible record by any stretch, but it feels far from the dominant pace many expected after that deep postseason run not long ago. This was supposed to be the kind of year where Buffalo entered every week as the unquestioned heavyweight of the conference, the type of team that would have double-digit wins before December and be chasing the top seed with confidence. Instead, they are back in the thick of a crowded playoff chase, sharing space with several teams still trying to figure themselves out. Many expected the Steelers to be in that position, still working through their rebuild, collecting young talent, retooling both lines of scrimmage, and figuring out how to reinvent themselves after major roster changes. But Buffalo? That part has been harder for fans to wrap their heads around. If you rewind just a little bit, the Bills seemed ready to chase a championship with a mature roster, a star quarterback, and a coaching staff that had built years of continuity. They pushed deep into the postseason, took Kansas City to the wire, and looked like they were 1 or 2 tweaks away from breaking through. That is why the inconsistency this year has been so jarring. One week the offense looks like a scoring machine, putting up more than 40 points without blinking, and the next week they struggle to get past the low teens. The range from explosive to stagnant has raised questions about everything from the supporting cast to the scheme. The conversations have been constant about whether the pieces around Josh Allen are complementing him the right way, whether the structure of the offense is maximizing his strengths, or whether the identity needs another reset. The bigger issue is that Buffalo simply has not played like a team chasing a championship. They have had bright moments, but nothing resembling week-to-week dominance. Injuries have played a role, but even with the roster mostly intact early in the year, the rhythm never quite settled in. Instead of rolling into December with a commanding lead in the division, they find themselves staring up at New England, which has already taken the head-to-head matchup and built a comfortable cushion at the top of the standings. With 2 losses inside the division, Buffalo has created a mountain they now need help to climb. The road to a 6th straight division title suddenly looks complicated, and that pressure shapes everything about the next stretch of games. This matchup against Pittsburgh adds even more weight because the standings are packed so tightly. Buffalo holds the 7th seed, and right behind them sit the Steelers and Texans, both within striking distance. Losing the tiebreaker to Houston already hurts, and dropping another head-to-head could create a messy playoff picture. That tension comes through when you look at how both teams are built right now. The Bills have struggled to find the consistency that turns good teams into great ones, and Pittsburgh has struggled to find the defensive identity that used to define the franchise. The contrast is sharp. Buffalo's offense might be unpredictable, but the numbers still show a unit capable of breaking games open. They remain near the top of the league in points, yards, and especially rushing output. Even on their worst days, you feel like one big play could flip everything. Pittsburgh, however, has not enjoyed that cushion on the defensive side. They've spent heavily on that group, invested major draft capital, and tried multiple variations of their scheme, especially in the secondary. They made bold moves, shipped out a cornerstone safety, brought in a star corner, adjusted roles, shifted alignments, and continuously experimented with different looks. At one point, the defense seemed to settle after switching to more split safety coverages. They played more aggressively, protected their corners better, and trusted the defensive front to win its matchups. The results were promising, showing signs of a turnaround as they picked up wins against Indianapolis and Los Angeles and stayed competitive with Cincinnati. Then came the matchup with Chicago, and everything changed again. For reasons that left fans confused, Pittsburgh abandoned the structure that had stabilized them and went back to heavy single safety coverages, leaning on spot drop zones that left massive windows for the Bears to exploit. Caleb Williams found open receivers repeatedly, and the defense looked like it had gone backward. That regression sets up one of the defining questions of this matchup. Will Pittsburgh stay stubborn with what did not work, or will they return to the looks that made their defense more reliable in recent weeks? Because if they give Buffalo those soft pockets in coverage, Any competent route runner is going to have open space to work with, and Josh Allen rarely misses when he gets clear coverage keys. The other challenge for Pittsburgh comes from the ability of Buffalo's run game to create explosive plays. The Bills have transformed their ground attack into one of the most efficient in the league, centered around James Cook's burst and Josh Allen's dual-threat ability. The Steelers have struggled to contain big runs, giving up a high rate of explosive plays on the ground. That is not the recipe you want facing one of the most dangerous backfield duos in football. If Buffalo finds rhythm on the ground, the offense becomes far more stable, play action becomes a real weapon, and the pressure on Pittsburgh's secondary escalates quickly. This is especially true considering the Steelers are dealing with injuries across their defense, including along the interior, where losing a key run defender makes everything harder. From Pittsburgh's point of view, the priority is clear. Do not let Buffalo control the game with a run. That is easier said than done, but if they cannot contain Cook and Allen, the passing game becomes too unpredictable, and that is when the Bills become the kind of offense that can take over a game. But shutting down the run cannot come with overcommitting, or else Buffalo will attack the secondary with crossers, digs, and routes that exploit isolated defenders. That balance is always tricky, but especially for a defense that has struggled to find its footing. For Buffalo, the path to stability starts with keeping the run game alive, especially with the questions surrounding the pass protection. They may be short one of their starting tackles, and Pittsburgh's pass rush, even with its inconsistencies, is still dangerous when it finds a rhythm. The Bills cannot afford to become predictable or let the Steelers dictate the matchups on the edge. Establishing the run early not only forces Pittsburgh to adjust, but also slows down the rush and opens chances for Allen to take calculated shots. One of the most intriguing aspects of this matchup is how both teams arrive at this point with completely different forms of pressure weighing on their shoulders. Buffalo walks in with expectations built over several seasons of contending, with fans still believing that at any moment this roster can snap back into the version of itself that once intimidated every opponent. Pittsburgh arrives with a young offense, still trying to define who they are, navigating the inevitable growing pains of developing a franchise quarterback while leaning heavily on the run game to set the tone. Each side comes in knowing that a single drive, a single turnover, or a single explosive play could shape the entire momentum of the afternoon. What makes Buffalo particularly dangerous is that even on their most inconsistent days, they always have the talent to turn a slow start into a sudden eruption. Josh Allen has a reputation for creating something out of nothing, firing a ball across his body on the run, or breaking out of the pocket when a play appears completely dead. Defenses often find themselves defending for far longer than they expect, which stresses coverage assignments, disrupts spacing, and forces linebackers to freeze just long enough for receivers to slip behind them. Pittsburgh has been vulnerable to those extended plays this season, especially when the secondary is asked to hold up too long without consistent pressure on the quarterback. That combination gives Buffalo a clear window to exploit if the Steelers cannot collapse the launch point quickly. On the offensive side for Pittsburgh, this game becomes a real test of discipline and patience. The Steelers have leaned heavily on Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren to build their offensive rhythm, using their physicality to create manageable downs and keep the playbook open. When the run game works, the entire offense feels smoother. The quarterback is not forced into tight window throws early in the down. The play-action game becomes a weapon, and the receivers have more space to attack soft spots in coverage. However, Buffalo's defense thrives on taking away comfort. They disguise coverages well, rotate late, and use their athletic linebackers to shrink the field horizontally. Pittsburgh cannot fall into predictable patterns, or Buffalo will happily sit on routes, read the quarterback's eyes, and jump opportunities. There's also the matter of tempo. The Steelers have been at their best when they control the pace, grind through long drives, and keep the opposing offense waiting on the sideline. Against Buffalo, that becomes even more critical. Sustained possessions keep Josh Allen from finding rhythm, limit the number of explosive opportunities, and we're down a defense that has dealt with injuries throughout the season. But those long drives only work if Pittsburgh stays disciplined up front. A holding penalty, a missed assignment, or a negative play can derail everything, forcing the offense into passing situations that Buffalo's pass rush can tee off on. The Steelers have to avoid self-inflicted setbacks at all costs because the Bills are too good at capitalizing on mistakes. Another factor shaping this matchup is the emotional swing that both teams have experienced leading into this week. Buffalo has dealt with criticism, doubts, and constant conversation about whether they are still a legitimate contender. Every victory feels like a statement they need to make, not just to the league but to their own fan base. Pittsburgh enters fighting for respect as well, with a young roster that is hungry to show that they belong in the playoff race and that they can go toe-to-toe with a team many still consider one of the most explosive in the conference. That kind of underdog ambition can fuel a team in moments when the odds appear stacked against them. The real tension comes from how each defense responds to pressure situations. Buffalo has shown that they can clamp down inside the red zone, using their speed and technique to shrink passing windows. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, has struggled to finish drives defensively, often giving up long possessions that slowly drain momentum. This game might come down to who can force threes instead of sevens. A couple of red zone stops could tilt the entire momentum and shift the tone of the afternoon. Both coaching staffs know this, which means you can expect plenty of creativity in those tight field situations, whether it comes through motion, misdirection, or unexpected personnel groupings. Another layer worth paying attention to is the mental battle between Josh Allen and the Pittsburgh defensive front. Allen is at his most dangerous when he feels like he can dictate the terms, using his legs not just as a bailout option, but as a design weapon. If Pittsburgh fails to set disciplined edges, Allen will find rushing lanes that extend drives and break the spirit of a defense. Containing him requires balance. Rush too aggressively, and he slips through. Sit back too cautiously, and he picks the coverage apart. The Steelers have struggled with that balance against mobile quarterbacks for years, which gives Buffalo a clear area to attack. Meanwhile, the Steelers will be looking for ways to put their young quarterback in positions where he can play with confidence rather than forcing the game. Buffalo's defense has shown vulnerability against well-timed routes over the middle, especially when offenses use layered combinations to stress the linebackers. Pittsburgh has receivers capable of winning those matchups, but timing becomes everything. Their quarterback must trust his progressions, avoid locking onto his first read, and stay patient enough to let the route concepts develop. Buffalo's secondary thrives on impatience, baiting young quarterbacks into mistakes by giving the illusion of open space before crashing down. Pittsburgh has to avoid those traps, especially early in the game. Before we dive back in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest Buffalo Bills updates straight to your screen. And hey, don't hold back. Let us know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments. Buffalo is buzzing, and the chatter around Orchard Park is reaching a fever pitch. Whispers in the corridors of power suggest the Buffalo Bills have pulled off a move that could fundamentally redefine their defense, sending shockwaves across the entire NFL landscape. Sources close to the organization are hinting at the imminent arrival of a game-changing pass rusher, a defensive maestro whose mere presence is rumored to be a complete transformation for the unit. This isn't just about adding depth. This is about securing an elite, disruptive force capable of wrecking opposing offensive schemes single-handedly. While no official confirmation has been made, the murmurings from team insiders and agent circles are growing louder and more insistent. The player in question, whose identity remains a tightly guarded secret, is described as having a rare combination of explosive speed, brute strength, and an almost psychic ability to sniff out sacks and tackles for loss. His addition would instantly elevate the Bills' defensive line from formidable to potentially the most terrifying in the league. Imagine an already stout Bills defense suddenly injected with this kind of top-tier, relentless pressure. The domino effect would be immense. Tighter coverage for the secondary, more forced turnovers, and quarterbacks spending every snap glancing nervously over their shoulders. This potential signing isn't just an upgrade. It's a declaration of intent. It screams that the Bills are all in, willing to make the aggressive, blockbuster move necessary to seize the advantage and cement their status as true championship contenders. Rivals are reportedly already panicking, running scenarios on how to counter a defense suddenly powered by this rumored addition. The whole league is holding its breath, waiting for the official word that will undoubtedly send the news desks into a frenzy. If these rumors are true, the Bills have just found the missing piece to their defensive puzzle, a piece that changes everything. Keep your eyes peeled. The Buffalo defense is about to get a whole lot scarier. The NFL is in shock. That's a wrap for now. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay on top of all things Buffalo Bills, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments. See you in the next update.